Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Very cozy. One of my favorite weekends of the year, even though it's in the middle of smack dab January. It is the divisional round. I'm very excited. Very excited to talk about these games and just overall excited. It got a free Thursday night now. Now that we're in the playoffs, so it's great. And I have dinner plans. I'm very excited for
where are you going?
Just to that casino near me. I do so much advertising. I don't want to say their name yet, but this casino that's near me. But they have it's just opened a few months ago. It's great to be again in your mid 30s because they're like marketing to the millennials.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's food hall with all like Hawaiian street food, all this great stuff. Even Barnwell knew the pizza shop that they opened up there because it's like from where he grew up in New York, I think. So we're going there tonight and I'm very fired up. So yeah, doing well.
I've already started my Vegas food planning. I think I have like 5 or 6 different reservations that I've made over the course of the week, just to have them, just to have them.
Any you want to shout out before any that you would really want to do? Like you're like kind of like that's 1A if you want to name that.
There's a lot of them that I'm excited about. There's a place called Esther's Kitchen. Have you been to Esther's Kitchen?
I have.
It's like an Italian place that's supposed to be really good. So I got a reservation there. There's a place called Lotus of Siam that's supposed to be really good. I was maybe planning to go there on like
second one near me too. That's a fantastic spot.
I'm thinking about that maybe earlier in the week. And then I think there's going to be one like Let's Go Big sort of dinner, either like Guy Savoy or Joe Robuchon or something like that, where it's like, okay, I got to take one big swing because there's so many amazing restaurants there.
There is.
So I think I'm going to try to do one of those over the course of the week. Bizarre Meat, maybe. The Jose Andres place that's on the strip, because for Super Bowl week, I feel like getting 6 or 8 of us together and just going ham at a place called Bizarre Meat is fitting. It's just fitting for the week and fitting for the sort of crowd we're going to have.
Was the ham, pun intended? Was that going ham? Like, was that like a pun intended moment?
We're going to be going Iberico ham. That's what we're going to be doing at the Jose Andres restaurant. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. The food in Vegas is obviously very, very good. So it's definitely a highlight of the trip.
Boy, don't I know. Maybe give me a trip. We'll get a day to downtown as well. It's kind of the locals area, that not Fremont, but the areas around Fremont, Arts District, of course, as they always name these types of places. But it's but very, very good food scene as well for anyone that is traveling to Vegas at any time.
I'll send you the list this week. I finally zeroed in on it, so I'll have you double check it.
I know this is a big deal for you. This is like
it's something I spent a lot of time on.
And food when you're traveling for more than 2 days, even for a day for you, narrowing down your restaurant choices.
It was tough in Detroit because there's so many places in Detroit I want to go and I want to try, but I just didn't have time because the games on Saturday went late and their games were happening at dinner time, and I was only there Saturday and Sunday, and it was just a bummer. I'm sitting there in my hotel like wanting to go eat a good meal, and I couldn't do it. Just couldn't make it happen.
So many good spots in Detroit. I've heard it's a fantastic food town.
I'm very excited. It'd be nice to actually go to Vegas to be able to do it. Little Caesars Bowl. There is Little Caesars in Detroit. That is an option for you if you want it.
I did not get Little Caesars that entire week, but I was there in Detroit for 5 days for the Little Caesars Bowl when I was at Pitt.
We do have Thursday off, so that's why you get to go to dinner. I might see a movie, but this is Divisional Round weekend, which is it's the best weekend of the year. Like there's no way around it. It is the best football weekend of the year. We have 4 fantastic games, 4 games where you really get to focus on each game. You still get 7 hours of football a day, but it is the best teams left in the NFL. So we're going to have a lot to talk about with these games, a lot to dig into. Before we start chewing on the divisional round schedule, though, let's talk about some of the news that has dripped out over the last couple of days since we last recorded. The Dallas Cowboys are sticking with Mike McCarthy as their head coach for 2024. What do you think of this?
Well, I mean, after that game happened and when we did the show, I was kind of thought that was a crossroads moment for this franchise. Kind of understood if Jerry Jones wanted to do that, even with the wins and the offensive innovation that happened this year, or just kind of revamp, I should say, this year. And I kind of understood, hey, this is it. It was not just a tough loss to a team that we expected to lose. It was a pretty brutal loss, and this is our time to split. I kind of understood that. So that's that's what I thought would maybe happen. Maybe it was just a narrative I had in my head, and maybe I just bought the what was being said at that moment. But I'm surprised, but also I understand because again, like I just started that with, they have the wins, they did have the offensive stuff, but it's just kind of still Mike McCarthy. So I don't know. It's like I'm all the way back to square one, and then it's like, is that good? I don't think so. But again, the results have been there. So I just don't know. It's just this kind of shrug.
If you're taking a logical, rational view of this, it makes sense to keep him. He's winning double-digit games every single year. You're a competitive team. You were a top 10 offense this year with him as your play caller. Dak had probably the best year of his career, the first year that Mike McCarthy took over. So I totally understand looking at the entire body of work and saying, well, yeah, we're going to stick with this. We're close. Why wouldn't we stick with this? But if I were a Cowboys fan, I'd be devastated.
Right.
Because we're running out of reasons to think that this is going to end any differently. This was probably your best shot. The way that the offense played, CeeDee Lamb's still cheap, turned into a superstar. You have other guys like Tyler Smith really taking a step forward. The offensive line as a pass protection unit was very good by the end of the season. You have this deep collection of defensive players up front, on the back end. A couple of those guys are free agents. I don't know if you'll have a team and a roster this good again over the next couple years because of how well they've drafted and some of the cheap hits that they've had. So you're looking at next year, and I just don't understand why the ending is going to be any different. Why is the offense going to be better than it was when it stalled out? Why is the defense going to be better than it was over the last couple years when it felt like the best defense in the league, but now we see some of the holes? And maybe next year in the NFC, if you just give yourself a shot, if you get into the dance again, some of the other teams aren't as good. You know, the Niners maybe take a step back, but it's not like they got blown out by the Niners in the NFC Championship game. They got blown out by the Packers in the wild card round. There's going to be a team like the Packers or two more of them every single year. So even with the body of work and the overall success, I still think it's deflating because I don't know what the path is to a different outcome if you're Dallas.
That's it. And even rewatching the game, the loss against the Packers, just specifically the Cowboys offensive side, and it's all the good and bad of all of it, which is just why this is kind of so, like, I don't know. I just feel like, I wouldn't say complicated, but just kind of
I think it is complicated though. I think it's a complicated decision.
It is, but I watched this offense. Okay. And then the interceptions that happened with Dak, and even just like some of the stalls that happened in the early game against the Packers. And some of it was the offensive predictability. It's the same stuff. And that's what it felt. It was like, yes, this stuff does work. And yes, this stuff does have answers, but at the same time, it feels like it can get clamped down on in the biggest moments. And that's where I'm at with the Cowboys. Like, hey, it works. It gets those double-digit wins. And yeah, it has some success. It beats up on the bad teams and the bad personnel. And then once it matters, it gets clamped down on. And
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. They had the best offense that they've had in recent years. Dak led second in the NFL in EPA per dropback, all that stuff. They played, according to Football, I keep saying Football Outsiders, they played, according to DVOA, the worst schedule of opposing defenses in the NFL. And they feasted on those teams. If you even look at DVOA overall, though, they were like 8th in offensive DVOA. They were good, but it's not like they were this earth-shattering sort of offense. And I think that's important context. And they're probably tied to Dak Prescott for multiple years moving forward. If you look at his situation, he's got a ton of leverage in these negotiations. He's got like a $60 million cap hit this year. It's $60 million in dead money if they trade him. He has a no trade clause. There's so many different things lining up where he is most likely going to get an extension this offseason that probably makes him the highest paid player in the NFL. And there is a pathway to winning with, as you said, a good but not great quarterback with that sort of cap hit. We've seen it happen before, but you need a significant schematic advantage to get to that place with that sort of quarterback. The best example to me is Matt Ryan in 2016. You can get there, but you need to make sure that you have somebody who's dialing pushing every right button, pulling every right lever. Right. And even if Mike McCarthy was better than we expected him to be from an offensive play calling, offensive design, offensive evolution standpoint, it's still not to that level. So that's why I think that you're just going to keep running into a ceiling over and over and over again.
And I don't mean, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but when I watch the Cowboys offense, I know literally every concept. It's because it's all classic stuff. And again, that's good, but it's also, and it works. These are tried and true classics. But when you hear us talking about a lot of these other offenses, it's going like, ooh, even the Rams who are running plays that are classics as well, but they do this one little motion at the beginning that I haven't seen before. Or they do this little thing with Puka Nacua that I've only seen one other team do. When I watch McCarthy. It's slant flat. It's the triple slants. That's what the pick six was on, it's called Ernie. Everyone runs it. Mike McCarthy has run it his entire time he's been a play caller. It's like it's been a part of this offense. So again, it's just like I don't know, man. It's just that they need new blood in there, but I don't think any's going to come. Like this is the same regime that had Jason Garrett for forever, even though
that's the other thing. You said that the narrative about whether Jerry Jones move on. This is who Jerry Jones is. He's patient with these.
He's very
he actually
loyal.
Sits and waits and sees how this stuff plays out.
There's a real disconnect, and it's been proven. Like this has been decades now. I think just the early '90s Jerry Jones with all the fights and all that stuff with Johnson and all that have carried over. But he's actually incredibly patient. He pays these guys very well, his assistants as well too. It's just it's a funny disconnect with Jerry Jones.
And I think that there is an argument. A lot of people, Mickey Loomis today, which I think is funny to compare it, but Mickey Loomis was coming out in his press conference over yesterday and saying that one of the reasons he kept Dennis Allen is he's pointing to Bill Walsh's early career record, Bill Belichick's early career record, some of these coaches who ended up being really good, who struggled a little bit early on. But that's not the story that you can tell yourself about Mike McCarthy. If they had a rookie contract quarterback, if there were paths to improvement, if you could see the areas where, okay, there's going to be some growth here, most likely. Yeah. Here's untapped potential.
Everyone knows Mike McCarthy, though.
That's what I mean. There's no room for this to grow.
I know
you have a quarterback you've committed to. We have known quantities all over the place. Maxed out is the term that you used after the game, and I think that's what it feels like. This is maxed out, and it's hard to fire a coach who's won double-digit games multiple straight years, but if it's maxed out in the wild card round or the divisional round in the best case scenario, I think it's worthwhile to think about why you're making this decision and what could potentially get you to that next step. So even if I get the decision, as you look at all of the numbers, all of the data, and what your team has been over the last couple of years, I still think it might be a mistake.
There's this very classic like coaching cliche, or like, motivate the kids at camp cliche, and it's just don't let good be the enemy of great.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what this is.
The Cowboys. It's like, they're good. And then it's like, no, and everyone's like, man, I'm sure you as a Bears fan, there's plenty of fan bases like, I would kill for that. I would kill for all this. It's like, but when that's the ceiling, though, that's the thing. They're hitting their ceiling over and over and over, just pounding it. And that's the thing. They need new blood to break through that ceiling. And it's just, where is it going to come from? Obviously not at the top, most likely not from the quarterback, which I also think is like, it's very hard to upgrade from Dak anyways, but it's like you could upgrade elsewhere. So where is it going to come from?
And I don't know how many pathways are going to have to that, because it's not like they have resources coming out of their ears. They're going to pay their quarterback $60 million a year.
I think the other teams now in the NFC, just like you mentioned before, okay, maybe the Eagles revamp. Okay, Washington has a high pick now. They might get a quarterback. That's in your division.
You're already worse than Green Bay.
You're already worse than Green Bay. You lost to Green Bay. Okay, Detroit, which you probably should have lost if the whole 6-man.
Who do you think is going to be better next year, the Rams or the Cowboys?
Rams. Yeah.
You're already behind the 8 ball. You're already probably the third or fourth best team, and have a third or fourth best outlook heading into the NFC next year. And that's just a tough place to start.
This was it. I know. This was the push.
Let's get to the other bit of coaching news that happened over the last 24 hours or so. Bill Belichick is slated to have his second interview with the Atlanta Falcons. And there is a lot of smoke around this now. It really does feel like we're trending in a direction where Bill Belichick is going to end up being the head coach of this version of the Atlanta Falcons. And it really does feel like we're trending in the direction where Bill Belichick is going to be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And this is setting up for a worthwhile football experiment on 5 different levels to me. But I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts on this? Because we haven't really talked about this at all. All of this has really started since the last time you and I sat here and did this.
Yeah, well, the smoke came early, and also, so I was kind of reading those tea leaves, just going to mix up the idioms, whatever. But the fact that it was a one-on-one interview with Arthur Blank, and then the interview with all the auxiliary pieces, the GM, the president, everything, that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. But the other thing is, this is the one question that I think has to be answered. Who's your quarterback? That's it. That's what I want to know. I get everyone's going, oh, it's cool. All these young pieces, maybe, I mean, if he brings all the Patriot cohorts with him, that I would also feel that's a little dicey because the defensive coordinator is obviously now getting interviews. Once they let that go, that was also another indicator of all this. But I will say it's who's your quarterback? What's your offensive thing going to be? Because otherwise that is going to be the fascinating experiment. Bill O'Brien.
That's why this is an experiment to me, because
He's
now
the guy.
we have a control in New England. What is football like when you have no offensive talent? And now you go to Atlanta where you have offensive talent. So now we get to learn if he brings Bill O'Brien and Josh McDaniels with him, for example, right? If both of those guys are on the offensive staff, if he just getting the band back together, we get to learn how much of the struggles in New England were about the talent and the personnel and how much of it was the offensive plan. And I love that. I love that now we just have this diametrically opposed situations. The last question, though, is quarterback. And where do you seek that out and how do you get it? In my mind, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this, it seems like hiring Bill Belichick means you're going to try to jumpstart the quarterback process. Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine, especially after what happened in New England, anyone wanting to sign up for a rookie quarterback and a rookie quarterback development plan with a 72-year-old head coach who's been brought in to win right now. So it feels like a more immediate and urgent option is probably heading down that way. I don't know who that is or what that looks like, but that would be my guess.
The other funny thing is I think some of this hiring is the narrative of the hiring. Oh, we're bringing in Belichick for discipline and all that, which is, again, pretty funny. If anyone has watched the Patriots team the last couple of years, especially on special teams, pretty sloppy outfit, offense and special teams. A little defense, not so much. Of course, the defense had a high standard there, but I don't know.
I think the defense could be really good. I have faith in the defense being really good with some of the pieces that they have down there.
The front guys actually fit perfectly from the guys that they're moving. Like, I know. So that actually makes a lot of sense. The offensive stuff, I'm very curious. Like, okay, I love the guy, but Jacoby Brissett, because he has a tie with these Patriot guys. We just, literally, Arthur Blank felt like he had an existential crisis watching Ritter this year. So now he's going to go.
I don't think you could be swinging for the Jacoby Brissett tranche of quarterbacks.
Otherwise, that's the thing. We always go Kirk Cousins, but then, Kirk Cousins' agent goes, exactly. And so, so that price tag.
But I would not be surprised if they were willing to pay for that, because they can pay for that. If you look at their books and their current financial situation, they would be in a position to give Kirk Cousins $35 million a year if they wanted to.
But do you think Kirk Cousins would go, I'd rather go with Kevin O'Connell and the guy I know in this offensive system, or Josh McDaniels?
I would not be surprised if the Falcons were more financially motivated to pay Kirk Cousins than the Vikings were.
Yeah, no. But no, you're saying money though. But I'm saying,
I think that Kirk Cousins has been plenty motivated by money in the past.
Yeah, exactly. But what about now? After he comes off an Achilles, you think he's going to?
I don't know.
Get up and go.
I don't know. I think that there is a chance that the Falcons could just kind of blow them away in terms of what they would be willing to offer, because I don't think the Vikings would be willing to give him like the Derek Carr contract from last year. I think there's a world where the Falcons are more motivated to do it and would be willing to give him significantly more than Minnesota would. If I were Kirk, I would probably go back with Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell. But I also think that there's a chance the Falcons would top that offer in a big way.
Yeah. But again, it comes out what Cousins wants. But if somebody else has a big offer, though, too, where are the other teams that we've gone? Oh, Kirk Cousins. There's plenty out there. So I'm curious what the market's how it's going to unfold.
And there aren't that many other guys in that tier, right? Like we have the Ryan Tannehill conversation, Justin Fields and what he looks like, but what they ended up doing at quarterback and what they ended up doing with the offensive staff, those are big questions independent of what Bill Belichick has left as a head coach. So this is going to be framed by the Falcons organization as the slam dunk. We got Bill Belichick. We got the greatest coach of all time. I don't know, man. I got questions. I got plenty of questions.
I do too. This is 5 years ago, even. I know. It's fat. It is. Still, you're fascinating because it is. I love this. It is. We've done the quarterback switcheroos, lately. The Stafford going to the Rams, Brady going to the Bucks, all that stuff. Russ going to the Broncos, all this stuff. Now we get this. Right? A little coach switcheroo is gonna be a little fun to watch.
We'll see what happens. All right.
Potentially.
It seems like we're trending that way, though.
Come on.
All right, let's get into these games. We're going to go in chronological order here. Let's start with Saturday afternoon special. That's where the Houston Texans live at this point. Texans at Ravens on Saturday afternoon. Ravens a -9.5 in this game. There's a lot of big lines for divisional round weekend, I think, just because of how everything shook out. Even though this is almost a double-digit line, and even though the Ravens are obviously heavy favorites, this game features what I think is one of the coolest matchups you could have in the NFL right now. We have the Ravens defense, which is the best defense in football, against arguably, I would say, the most exciting young quarterback in football. So even though the Texans just squeaked into the playoffs and just won the AFC South, everything that has happened since, I think, has set us up for a fantastic football nerd outing on Saturday, watching that offense go against this defense.
And the potential likely MVP winner going against the potential offensive rookie of the year winner.
Yeah.
So you got that. I mean, again, the quarterbacks of the AFC are just, I mean, you can't really go wrong. There's a lot of them just in that conference.
But those four,
so,
I mean, those four that we ended up getting when we were talking about Stroud last weekend, and we were saying, who would you rather take over CJ Stroud right now? The first three names out of your mouth are the three other quarterbacks that are playing in the divisional round in the AFC. So it does not get much better than that. It's going to be fantastic.
Guarantees 2 into the next round. But no, it's also, you have one of the best units we've watched in the last couple of years, especially on the defensive side, like you said, but also just schematically and performance. That's the difference between that Browns defense and this Ravens defense.
So that's what I wanted to
we've watched the last decade.
That's what I wanted to dig into, because a lot of people are going to say, well, look at what the Texans did to the Browns defense. And I understand that.
I do
but
too.
The Browns are a very different sort of defense than the defense that Houston is going to face with the Ravens. The Browns played cover 1 or cover 3 on 80% of plays against the Texans last week. 80%. That's how regulated the looks were that the Texans were getting. On those plays, CJ Stroud, 14 of 17 for 234 yards, 13.8 yards per attempt, a very cool 0.78 EPA per drop back, which is about 3 times the league leader for context. Yeah. That is the exact opposite of what the Ravens are. If you look at the way the Ravens play, spin the wheel. You have no idea what you're going to get. You have all these disguises, guys coming from different places. So even if he's faced the number 1 and number 2 defenses by most metrics over the last 2 weeks, what he's about to see in Baltimore this weekend is a very different sort of challenge.
Absolutely. The predictableness of that Browns defense, which does overwhelm opponents. Sometimes that's what it is. You just let them play. When you play simple, you just let your guys go.
That's it.
But that's the philosophy of it. But the thing was, watching that Texans offense and Bobby Slowick, I mean, just watching Nico Collins go in motion throughout just the first drive, it was just all to manipulate the man coverage. And it's just, that's the thing. If you're going to show man coverage, which we'll get to later about a different team, but if you're just going to show it, it becomes pretty easy for the quarterback, because he goes, as long as he can navigate the pass rush. That's also the philosophy. We'll run man coverage because we'll beat you in 2.2 seconds before you can get rid of the ball. But as we see, like the Packers against the Cowboys, if you block it up, we can shred you because we know exactly what you're in. It's pretty easy. If you play pickup football, it's so much easier if you're going, oh, it's man coverage. But if someone runs zone against you, try and throw against zone and pickup football. I'm telling you guys. How many
pickup football games you play where teams are playing disguised zone coverages?
So when I was with the Falcons, we would like me and the other grunts, equipment room, medical staff, other scouts, we would play flag, or we'd play it was almost like ultimate football. It's like no run after the catch, So I was always quarterback. And as soon as these teams were, the other defense started running like cover 2 against me, my guys, it's like assistant trainer. They don't know how to sit down in a zone. So it was a lot of like me pinning throws on guys' chests, like trying to, it was a great work.
I love you. I'm going to be very honest with you. This is a very specific life experience that you're dealing with here. Not a lot of us were playing pickup football with other guys that were employees of the NFL franchise that we worked for.
Shout out to the Falcons equipment staff.
The last time I was playing pickup football, there was not a lot of complex zone coverages happening.
But it wasn't even complex. That's what makes it annoying. It's just they didn't know how to sit. But anyways, that's it. If you know it's man coverage, it's so much easier. Okay, I have Johnny against the guy that we know is their worst defender. All right, I'm going to pick on him over and over. Or I know that we can have this outside leverage on this thing. I know that's the better throw. So I think that's just exactly it. You go into this Ravens defense, which is just like every snap, it could be anything. It's the whole Rolodex coverages. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch Stroud try to navigate it, but it just, again, it won't be as, every play action we run is going to get 20 yards, just like it was last week. It's just a big difference.
Watching the early drives of that game against the Texans last week, watching the Browns defense was just frustrating. The Texans are objectively a bad rushing offense. Bad. They are a bottom 6 to 7 rushing offense in any metric that you want to look at.
Every metric.
I want to say they're even worse than that in rushing yards over expected this year. So they're 26th in EPA per rush, and they're 25th in success rate. Yep. So you can understand my frustration watching the first couple drives of that game when the Texans are in 12 personnel and the Browns are just loaded up with 8 guys in the box in a single high shell against a team that wants you to do that. Yeah. That is exactly what they want you to do. And they play less heavy personnel than other teams off this tree. I was actually kind of surprised about that when I was looking at the numbers. It's only like 60%. It's 60% 11. So it's whatever numbers at 12 and 21. It's still heavier than most teams, but it's not like the Niners or Dolphins do. But they still want to do the same things. They still want to manipulate you on early downs to throw the ball. The Texans by far are most efficient throwing the ball out of 21 personnel. That is their best personnel group to throw the football. And it's because of what defenses react with. Correct. The Ravens, when they played against the Niners earlier this year, again, slightly different, but same sort of ideas. The Ravens used a light box against the Niners on more snaps than anyone else in the NFL this season. It was 63%. Most teams were below 50%. Yeah. And the Niners are a good running team. So I fully expect Mike McDonald to come out there in this game and just say, we're going to dare you to run the ball against us. We're not going to give you these regulated single high looks because why would we? Other than the bodies you're putting on the field, nothing else about your offense dictates that we should play you this way.
And it also makes sense because that 49ers game specifically, they're running a bunch of cover 6, and that was getting the corner involved and to the tackle. Marlon Humphrey did a great job. He might be out, but the additional benefit of running cover 6 is being that cloud corner, that cover 2 corner, way easier than a lot of other asks at the corner position. So whoever has to fill his place, that can kind of make his coverage life a little bit
Ronald
easier.
Darby probably, right? So I assume Darby will step into that role.
I'd much rather have Humphrey and man coverage or quarters locked on a guy than Ronald Darby. But they're going to do it. Don't get me wrong. But that just gives a little bit of another benefit. But that was their answer to it. And it totally makes sense. You want that corner involved. It changes where the attack angles are on the run. So now you have a guy pinching inside. And when you're trying to work outside, that's just the collision course on it. So that is the natural answer to beat that Ravens defense. And it was kind of cool in that first matchup that the Ravens are like, 49ers got them a couple times, but that's the 49ers. This is the Texans run game, just like you were saying. So I think it's going to be Texans. Their fastball is that play action shot game because Stroud's amazing at it and they have some speed. So I think that's going to be, it's like, hey, can we get 5 of these? Just create all these first downs because I think it's going to be too tough of sledding to go down to down and just try and nickel and dime them.
And you look at what Nico Collins did to the Browns, even against Denzel Ward. Nico Collins is so explosive. He's so fast on those big crossing routes against single high. Even if you're playing an elite corner, you can still pick on him in those moments. The Ravens
ready for the Nico Collins top 10 receiver discussion this year. That was just
I was ready.
Top 10. I was like, maybe just outside of that.
I thought he had a chance to break out in a big way. I did not anticipate him to be this sort of player. He has been phenomenal. But against this team, even if the Ravens corners aren't the star power on that roster, the Ravens do an excellent job of protecting their corners. So Nico Collins against Ronald Darby doesn't become a matchup that makes sense or matters in my mind based on the way that the Ravens play. So I just think that there are very few places where the Texans have a decided advantage over this Ravens defense like they did over the Browns. Right. And the one other thing that I thought was worth watching, I went back and watched the Jets game because the Texans really struggled against the Jets. Part of that is because Collins and Tank Dell were out.
And then Stroud got hurt too, right?
Stroud got hurt later, but even early in the game when Stroud was playing, they had a hard time. And the Jets were playing a lot of man, but the other thing I thought was interesting is the Jets were just mugging up the fronts all game. And the Texans were struggling dealing with it. Whether the blitzes were coming or not, they really made them sort through that kind of stuff. But what do the Ravens love to do? The Ravens are going to mug it up and bring tons of funky pressures at you the entire game. So I think that some areas where the Texans have either struggled or not been asked to meet challenges this year become very relevant when you're playing against this Ravens defense.
And what's funny is we even did on the pre-show, we're like, how much you take away from week 1? It was week 1, the first start of CJ Stroud's career. Totally different vibes of these teams. Like now we know.
I'm not even acknowledging that game happened when discussing this game.
I did want to just have that kind of caveat, kind of just like, hey, that disclaimer, I should say, just going like, hey, okay, we both want to acknowledge that game did happen, but this is just these teams are just so vastly different than those identities in week 1.
Is there anything that you feel like any area where you think the Texans have an advantage in this game?
Well, Nico Collins against, if they do catch him in any single coverage, that is an advantage because I just think he's that type of player and Humphrey is out. I think you can catch, Patrick Queen a little bit with some movement throws and everything, which is the bootlegs, but I also think some of those nakeds and everything, get guys across his face. So you might see some Dalton Schultz in this game. And like, obviously, because that's going to be the secondary target anyways, but I mean more just like underneath. I think that really is going to be the way you pepper this defense. But I don't know. I just like, it's not like I go, oh, they have some running back that they can really use in the pass game, because I feel like that is another way, but it's like, not really.
Yeah, who is that?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying, those are the natural answers, but like we just both talked about, being these zone more coverages that can, negate the advantage of Nico Collins more than the advantage that you can bring.
That's kind of what I mean. If you are not playing the way the Texans want you to play, I think that this Ravens team is set up to give them problems. By the way, I went back yesterday just because I had a discussion with Chase on the show this week where we're talking about CJ Stroud and what he was as a prospect. And I said some stuff and I was like, I wonder if that's actually true. And I went back and I watched the Georgia game again just to see if there was anything about that game that maybe we were just missing something about him as a prospect that should have pointed us in this direction. And my answer after watching it was maybe. Right. Like there were some things that he did in that game. Yeah. There were some things that he did in that game where now that I watch it through the lens of what he is now, it makes more sense. There are some off-platform throws. The way he drives the ball, I think, was underrated. I think we underrated what his arm was in college because he's so smooth. Yeah. I think we understated how strong of an arm and how much arm talent that he had. That's really what stuck with me. And then there was some of the pocket movement stuff that you saw, some of the off-platform stuff. They threw a screen in the red zone where his release on the ball was almost exactly like the throw he had to Nico Collins last week against the Browns. So there were little touchdown moments where I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But I don't think that the entire draft or NFL community should be shamed for missing out on CJ Stroud after going back and watching that game. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, my QB1, so I was good.
We said it. If I had the number one pick, that's who I would have drafted. But he's been the best rookie quarterback I think I've ever seen. So
I'm telling you, it's like he's already hit the ceiling that I thought he could maybe reach. So I'm fired up because his game is just so clean. He doesn't scramble much. He still doesn't do that. He's still a good athlete. He just wants to win from the pocket and dice you up. And smooth is the word I keep coming back to. He is so smooth. Yeah, clean was the term I came with. He was a clean thrower. We took that as a negative, but I still thought that I was like, it's so much better to see a guy try to win from the pocket than always try to rely on creation, which will be a whole conversation we're going to have in the next couple of months. But with Stroud, the Northwestern game when he was throwing in the wind, that's when he only threw for like 80 yards that game, but he had like 4 or 5 drops. He was creating. He ran like on a zone read. That was the game that I was just like, oh man, he's actually doing, like, he's willing his team to this win because Northwestern was on their shit. And that was the game that stuck with me, Iowa game. But yeah, he's just been 2 levels better than I thought he would be his rookie year.
There was a play where he had to dodge Jalen Carter in the pocket, where he had to step up and then throw. And it wasn't an off schedule play. It wasn't an out of the pocket play. He didn't like create outside the pocket. He literally just slid up and made a throw in the pocket. And watching that, I was like, that's it. Like we should maybe not in the moment should you know that that's what his superpower is going to be, but that is the type of stuff that's going to show up over and over and over again when he gets to the next level. So it was just interesting to go back and watch it. Yeah. On the other side of the ball, we spent so much time talking about CJ Stroud. The MVP of the NFL is the quarterback on the other team.
It's funny you say this because I got my hands on some Texas Tech Patrick Mahomes film, and that's an off-season study thing I want to do is just go back and be like, okay, like how do I view him now?
Now you're giving ideas away for the May athletic football show here because that's exactly what we should spend May and June doing. It's going back on what we can learn from those guys. So
I came across
pencil that in right now. That's like May 11th. We'll do that exact show. On the other side of the ball in this game, we have the MVP of the NFL, presumably, playing against a very young, very exciting defense. But the Texans offense against the Ravens defense, I think is an intriguing matchup because those are 2 strengths. It feels to me like the Texans defense is going to have a little bit more trouble keeping up with this group than they did with Joe Flacco last week. Am I wrong?
No. And just imagine the Joe Flacco in the first half before the first pick 6.
Yeah,
they're keeping up. They're going toe to toe. It was like a CJ Stroud, Joe Flacco haymaker fest. And then the pick 6 happens. And then it was like, oh, it was cool, Joe. Back again. He's like, I just don't even want to be here anymore. The second one happened. No, that was it. But I think too, it's this Ravens offense. It's very hard to say scheme wise exactly what they're going to do because they do everything. So
That's what makes them so dangerous.
Yep. And they can do it well. And they have some complementary pieces. This defense of the Texans, they have a good pass rush, but they're going against, one of the best negators of pass rush in the NFL. And Lamar, who can make Aaron Donald miss in the pocket. He made Will Anderson in week 1 miss a couple times in the pocket as well. I think also is that their back end, their spine is still a weakness. And that was something Flacco was targeting at the beginning of the game. And Njoku was getting plenty of catches to start the game. This Ravens passing game has a few more weapons and a quarterback that's going to fire it all over the yard and 3 receivers that can take each catch up the middle and take it to the house, and a tight end, Isaiah Likely or Mark Andrews, that works over the middle. So they just have better answers for this Texans defense, even if the pass rush for the Texans defense is pretty good and they can stop the run pretty well as well.
Think about the way that Browns offense was comprised last week compared to this Ravens offense. You have 2 backup tackles, and even if the Ravens tackles have been a slight issue over the course of the year, health,
it's not that
quality of play. It's not Jerron Christian and James Hudson. No disrespect to them.
No,
but those
not,
are the 4th and 5th tackles. So
Yeah.
those are matchups that you don't have a decided advantage. And think about the way that Derek Stingley approached that game last week. He's following Amari Cooper around the entire game because you're not worried about the secondary outside receivers torching you from this Browns team. Well, which receiver would it even be on this Ravens team? If you want him to follow OBJ, you got Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. If you want him to follow OBJ or Zay Flowers, then you got OBJ. So there are just so many more weapons.
And all 3 can work from the slot or outside. That's why they're a pain in the ass.
They're such a chameleon now in a very cool way where they can just kind of change depending on the situation. I think that's what makes them so scary. I will say, if there is an area where I think that the Texans can maybe make a play or 2 and keep pace, it's just getting after Lamar. It's both it's the edge guys winning because the tackle play has been shaky at times. And we have seen these DeMeco Ryans teams be willing to lean into the blitz at times. And I think that's probably your best bet. Lamar's been better against it. He was so good against it when they played against the Niners, who I think probably had a similar thought where it's like, let's bring some heat and let's see what we can do. And Lamar was fantastic. So I think they just have too many answers to any single problem that you could present to them right now.
I think they can make it a slog if they do try to run it, but that's the thing is you got to keep the game script okay, on the other end. You got to get some points too. So they can make it like if they can keep Gus Edwards in check, okay, make some 3rd and longs. And like you said, have the blitz. Blitzing makes Lamar volatile. Yes, you might get shredded by him, but at least you have a chance to get a negative play.
Volatility is what you want when you're a double-digit underdog.
Correct. Because usually it's like, okay, it's a neutral situation. Okay, that's not bad because it's not us getting shredded by Lamar. Okay, but sometimes we might actually get a explosive play for the defense, which is how you have to play. It's like what you have to do against this.
Talking about specific guys, Grenard was fantastic last week, and we know what Will Anderson is. So those are the 2 guys that I'd probably zero in on in terms of the difference makers that we could see from that Texans side and what they've been throughout the course of this season. Any other matchups, any other things that you're watching in this game before we move on?
Oh man, I already mentioned it, but I kind of spoiled my own thought here. But I just want to see how they handle Lamar and his run game. Like if they do the QB run game with Lamar, the read stuff and all that element, that is something that you can get after some of these DeMeco Ryans defenses, which is just 2 49ers and Texans, because they are so aggressive and they just really take the bait on stuff. So do they try and play that up at all? Because again, once you get into the playoffs, stuff gets game planning. So now do we get some funky looks from that defense up front?
I'm so glad that you brought that up because just thinking about what a win or a loss would mean for both of these teams. If the Ravens lose this game, it's devastating. It is devastating with the team that they have and with the real hopes that they have. And a lot of people, I assume, I haven't watched a bunch of stuff this week, but I guarantee you on a lot of more mainstream football broadcasts, there's going to be a lot of mention of what Lamar Jackson's playoff record looks like and the struggles that this team has had in the postseason. I understand that. This is a different team. And the reason that this is a different team is, like you just mentioned, in the playoffs, things get game planning. Well, the Ravens used to have a 1-dimensional offense.
Correct.
Now they have a 5-dimensional offense. So it's just a different sort of beast that you're dealing with this version of the Ravens. But that's why it would be so heartbreaking if they didn't win this game and if this is where they bottomed out or topped out again. I don't expect that to happen, but that's what has to be in the back of your mind if you're a Ravens fan.
Yeah, absolutely does. That's the thing is I don't even think of that stuff. And then now it's like, oh yeah. But like you said, this is why you brought in Todd Monken. This is why you invest in all those receivers. This is why you put your faith in Lamar and give him input on the offense, not just run game stuff, but actual drop back passing game. That is because we're going to talk about this with other teams too. The ability to pivot in the playoffs is the most important thing. Yes, you have your quarterback, but can you do quarterback run game? Can you do normal run game? Can you use your receivers, your tight ends, play action, drop back? What did I just say? The Ravens can run a little bit of everything. That's a feature of this offense, not a bug. And that's on purpose because of the playoffs.
And we've seen them be efficient with their passing game before. I mean, when Lamar won the MVP in 2019, they were one of the most efficient passing games in the league. But it was a hyper-specific way that they approached it.
It's like 22 personnel, a whole bunch. Like it was all these, really tightened down looks with big shot plays and everything. Yeah.
They just have so much more flexibility now, and I think that's why they're so much more scary and so much more dangerous. Yep. Let's get to our next one here. Saturday nights, Packers at Niners, another 9.5 point line, and
20 times.
And again, and another Packers-Niners playoff game. Here we go again. We've had some heartbreaking moments for Green Bay against these Shanahan Niners teams over the last few years. You have that tough one in Lambeau 2 years ago, which I'll always have a very unique relationship to that game because that game happened while my friend was getting married because their wedding had to be rescheduled. And I avoided the game the entire time. I knew nothing about it. And I got home and the game was waiting for me. I made Casey go downstairs and turn it on so I didn't see any news. And she started the DVR. So I got home and watched the game at like 2 a.m. And I watched the whole thing all the way through. And then the next morning I flew to see Chiefs Bills. So that was that weekend. And that was a tough loss. I mean, that was a Packers team who was one of the best offenses in the league. They slowed down the Niners offense. To lose that game 13-10 is just absolutely brutal. And then speaking of brutal, that game in 2020, I was there. I was at that game when Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball 8 times and Raheem Mostert ran for 220 yards. So there have been some tough moments for these Packers teams against the Niners. This is slightly different though.
Yeah.
Because those Packers teams, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers was the MVP. You have a 37-year-old quarterback where you think, our time is now. This Packers team, we've used the term house money 1,000 times. That's kind of what it feels like. So even if we're seeing the same teams again on the same sort of stage, I think the stakes are a tiny bit different for both of them this time around.
They've met, oh man, I was just even looking this up. How many times did they met in the playoffs? They met 9 times in the playoffs. Jeez, because this is my childhood too. This is, our childhoods. This is the 90s games.
And even more recent than that, I was at the Kaepernick game in 2012 where he absolutely went wild. And then there was they played at Lambeau in like 2013, 2014, correct?
Mm-hmm. I would say, so we got 2013 season.
Yeah.
And then, so January 2014.
Yeah, so they played at Lambeau. Yeah. And then they lost that game as well. So we've got 4 straight playoff losses against the Niners.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That means more to that matters more to Packers fans than it does to anybody involved with the
Packers more just right now. It's the bogey team. Yeah. It's just not again. That's
exactly right. Yes.
Not again. We're playing them. Yeah. The most recent one, of course, is vivid to me, but because that's when it was also like, that was 2 weeks in a row. Like D'Amico Ryans really asserted himself as a dude. That was when he was doing the blitz stuff.
One of the coolest defensive performances I can remember since I started doing this job.
The Cowboys and Packers games were 2 of the best third down game plans you will ever see in the playoffs. And I truly mean it. So that's why that one sticks in my mind. And also, like you said, those all the run stuff, they were moving Debo all over the formation and the Packers just had no answers. It was a deep pantsing. So here we are in a game. I believe the point total is 50.5. So I think there might be some deep pantsing again on both sides of the ball, which I'm very excited to talk about because this game's juicy.
I think it's easy to forget how good the Niners are. Everyone's very excited about the Packers, which I get. Jordan Love is playing phenomenal football. They just destroyed a team that they were a touchdown underdog against last week on the road. But the people have this vision of the Niners losing to the Ravens on Christmas, a game that everyone watched. It was on prime time, potential Super Bowl preview. They lose to the Ravens with some fluky turnovers, and the Ravens end up winning that game. The only time we've seen this Niners team at full strength since then was a Week 17 game against Washington where Christian McCaffrey got hurt. That game happened at 3:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. The only people in America who gave a shit about that football game are the ones that had people in their fantasy finals. That game happened in the woods. No one heard it. And then they sat their guys in week 18. Yep. So there hasn't been a lot of recent Niners exposure. And I think it's important to remind everyone how good the Niners are. And that's why this is a 9.5 point line.
I wrote about the Rams last week, and it was talking about their offense and the stat. I had like the Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Stafford, and Cup are on the field. They have like one of the best offenses we've seen in the last 20 years. All these stats, and they're second in success rate this year. Who are they behind? Every other stat that I was looking at and all my stats, they weren't better than the 49ers have been this entire season, which means just by default, it's one of the better offenses we've seen in the last 20-ish years. And I think DVOA says the same as well. But
it definitely does. Yeah.
Yes. Outside of all the losses, maybe the Browns game is maybe the one where Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel got hurt, have been come down to some fluky, bouncy turnovers or Brock Purdy just getting punished for one of his chaotic moments. But think of just what the offensive stat lines have been in those games. They've truly had their way. It's like this offense is a juggernaut, and the defense is good too. And that's what makes this team, probably one of the Super Bowl favorites, even after that loss against the Ravens. Because if you look at it down to down, they still had answers. Just those turnovers happened. So they're good. They're very, very, very good.
Let's start on the side of the ball where the Packers have a better fighting chance, and that is their offense going against the Niners defense. The Packers offense has been a top 5 unit. I mean, the way that Jordan Love is playing, it's not like this is a young upstart group that's just plucky and better than we thought they were going to be. They are really, really good, and the Niners defense does have some weaknesses that you can pick on a little bit. So if you're the Packers and you're trying to carve a path on that side of the ball, what do you think is your best way forward?
Get my guys Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave out there for every snap.
You are becoming more of a caricature of yourself every single day.
It's unbelievable, though. It works. It works. I actually did straight up. I actually was trying to find a different angle at this, but then I started breaking it. I look eye test. I'm looking at stats. I'm like, God damn it. But why that all matters, and this is the legit thing, guys, is that all my 49ers stats right here are going to be after the bye week because they revamped their defense. They had Chase Young. They moved Lenore to the slot. Their defense just had a little personnel shift. So, but since then,
Steve Wilkes came down to the field. Little things.
Yes. But usually guys do that when they're up for head coaching candidacies too. Who's that's a big thing. Kind of like, make sure your face is on the sideline. So yeah. But 49ers are middle of the pack stopping the run just overall. But you need a good game script to be able to keep running the ball. Again, we're going to talk about the other side of the ball and why that might be an issue. They're 21st in defensive success rate since their week 9 bye. They're middle of the pack defending play action overall. But when you get them into that 3 linebacker, 4 DB look, they are just bad. They are just not a good defense. They allow 5.2 yards per play when defending out base on early downs, on first and second down. 25th in explosive pass rate. The bad 25th. They're the 25th worst team at doing that. 25th best team. I'm sorry. They're middle of the pack defending the pass in terms of success rate. But this is the big thing here. This is what is when Aaron Jones has come back, when these tight ends have come back, now that they've solidified their offensive line. The 49ers are dead last in rushing success rate when defending out base personnel.
Why do you think that is?
I think Oren Burks is not as good as Lenore, which matters. That is a big deal. Getting the third linebacker and dropping it off. Lenore is still out there, but he's outside. So it's just that drop off of personnel. I think they're just how they play. I mean, they get real upfield. So when you have 2 linebackers on the field, you can get, 2 tight ends on the field, the different runs you can get to, like split zone stuff. True outside zone stuff, like towards the tight end, and just those balance looks too. The 49ers like to be very bounced, quarters and then rotate down. So when you have those 2 tight end looks or 21 looks, you can manipulate that. Okay, they rotate down here. Okay, we'll run away from that, which is what I think the Packers are going to do. And I think it's easy. There's a proof of concept of it. Just watch the first half against the Cowboys last week. They're going to probably copy and paste some of that game plan. I think this is a one angle that they have here that they can pound the rock out of heavier personnel and then try and get to the big play action plays because they're bottom 8 in EPA per play, defending play action out of base. They're bottom 4 in success rate. They've allowed 9 yards per play defending play action out of the base, which is bottom 3 in the NFL. So this is one line, one path that the Packers could take. And I don't think I have to shove them or nudge them too much to take that path either.
What was really encouraging is just how well they played up front against Dallas last week, because that's an area, Rasheed Walker, younger pieces. What are they going to do against Micah Parsons in that group? And they were phenomenal. So the Niners pass rush in theory would be a daunting challenge, and I'm less worried about it than I would have been earlier this season or even last week. So if he gets time, that's really encouraging. And I still think that he's going to have to make 3-4 hero throws in this game, just against that pass rush. And we've seen him do it. His ability to navigate the pocket, make off-platform plays, and just make plays that aren't sitting there in front of him, where he actually has to go out and grab it. He's been able to do that. And I think if they're going to win this game, he is going to need 3 or 4 more of those.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a classic quarterback versus Mike linebacker battle, but but through the pass game, it's Fred Warner lurking over the middle he's one of the best defenders of play action though, because he'll run.
And the Niners are one of the best teams against the middle of the field throws in the NFL this season, and the Packers have been phenomenal on them. So that area, I think, is going to dictate how that game goes.
Classic. And Love's going to be hunting them. That's what they do. That's what this offense wants to do. They want to pound the rock, zone, and then they hit you with some stuff over the top, and they have a quarterback that wants to do it. But it's going to be great watching Love use his eyes, try and manipulate Warner a little bit, because Warner's really good at watching those quarterback eyes and run the route concepts. So that's going to be a really fun kind of one-on-one.
And they're able to run the ball now. And this Niners team has not been very good against the run. Base personnel, nickel personnel, however you want to do it. Yep. And the Packers are set up to do that now. So their flexibility, their explosiveness, everything about their offense, I think, does give them a fighting chance on that side of the ball. The problem is, on the other side of the ball, I think it's harder to find that path forward.
That's the issue.
I know the Packers defense played well against Dallas last week, but for multiple, it's kind of similar to the conversation we had about the Texans defense against the Ravens and the Browns. You look at offensive numbers this year and how good the Cowboys offense has been. You think, well, look what the Packers did against a high level offense. Maybe they can do it again. For 2 reasons, the Cowboys offense had to be one dimensional last week. 1, they're losing, and 2, they're not very good at running the ball. Mm-hmm. So if you look at what the Packers defense did, they played with a light box on 85% of their plays last week against Dallas. They were able to just sit there and play coverage, and when they had that many bodies dedicated to it, they could do it. You're not going to be able to do that against the Niners. The game script is one consideration, but what the Niners can do running the ball is another one. They're so much more flexible and so much more dangerous than that Dallas defense is, because if you're going to come out there and say, all right, we're going to put more bodies in coverage, we're going to play a little bit later because we don't want you to throw the ball over the yard on us, the Niners are going to say, fine, we'll run the ball 40 times. Yeah. we don't really care.
I love that.
Yeah. So I just don't know what the right approach is. Do you put 5 guys, you play 5 down on early downs, you get more bodies up there and just play nickel with those 5, with that 5-man front, and hope that's your best answer? But I don't know. That seems like the best way forward for the Packers, but there's no good answer to any of these problems.
The teams that had the look outside getting the turnovers seem to just go, hey, play zone and just try to survive the shot plays.
Yeah.
Hey, they're going to get it on the run. They're going to get it on the run. They're going to get it, like Christian McCaffrey's going to get his 130 yards in the first half, but don't let Purdy get these 20 yards per chunk. Yeah. And it's just these 2 first downs at a time, these touchdowns at a time. So I think that's how you kind of want to live it. And again, it's the classic, like keep clamps on it and keep it down, stay top down on it. But that's easier said than done because these Shanahan guys, and this is Kyle Shanahan, they have the answer, then they have the counter, then they have the second counter, then they have the third counter, and then they go all the way back to just pound the rock on you. So it's just, again, it's easier said than done. I was trying to find some answer. I was like, oh, the Packers defense is pretty good against zone runs. And I was just like, but it wasn't like, they're not great. Like, they're middle of the pack. Like, you know what I mean?
That is important to bring up, though. This Packers run defense is not the disaster that it has been in years past.
Stumbled into a good point.
This idea of, okay, we're going to let the Niners run the ball. That is ideally how we're going to build our plan for this game. Yeah. That's not a disaster from the jump, the same way it would have been over the last couple of years. And I think it's because their guys up front are just better than they've been in years past. Like, they play with those 5-man fronts a lot on early downs. And if you look at those 5 guys individually, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, Preston Smith, they have as much or more talent than a lot of the offensive lines that they are going to play against. And that wasn't necessarily the case in the last couple of years watching these Packers teams in the playoffs.
It's so funny. And even Van Ness, their first rounder, it was like, is a rotational guy, and he's fine. He's always been a project and everything, but they have depth. Like, to your point, they have depth there. And I'm curious how they use Devondre Campbell and everything, because he might be running back and forth a lot. Jair, I think another thing too. I just want to talk about one thing on the back end is Jair Alexander has kind of he gets unlocked when he gets to just be like funky. I'm going to like punch a guy in the chin strap, like just really kind of just gets to be aggravating and be a pest, to take a hockey term. Like that's what's the guy that used to play for the Rangers? Sean Avery. Do you remember that guy?
I do. Yes.
Yes. It's like Sean Avery. That's Jair Alexander. But that's the thing, is kind of not a bad formula. They put him in motion and everything, but all right, maybe limit Ayuk. If he's a single receiver, let's just get it funky. Don't let him win. Just like mess with him a little bit, throw off the timing a little bit. That's again, when you're, were they underdogs? They are 10 point underdogs.
Yeah, the 10 point underdogs. Yeah, you got to do something.
You got to do something. So that's what it is. You have to live. You're going to get punched in the face a couple times, but this is how you have to do it, because you have to create, again, that volatility.
I just think those 5-man nickel fronts where you have 5 down linemen, 1 linebacker off the ball, and so you're trying to win those one-on-ones up front. You're not letting them get a lot of double teams, but you still have nickel personnel on the field. It's still, that feels like the best approach, even if it's not ideal. And I think you just have to throw a dozen different coverages at them. It just has to be a spin the wheel Rolodex sort of approach. They've gashed teams that have played too high stuff against them, but it's the teams who have thrown out a bunch of different coverages that have had at least a fighting chance. And that's really all you're trying to give yourself, is a fighting chance.
That's it.
The one stat that I thought was just unbelievable, because you have to get this team in defined passing situations. They don't want to drop back on 3rd and 8. That's not the type of team they want to be. Their offensive line is not built for that. If you get this team in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, that's where those mismatches and those advantages up front can really show up. The problem is the Niners are never in those situations.
That's the thing. It's always easier said than done.
This season, according to Next Gen Stats, they have faced a 3rd and 4 or more. So 3rd and medium and 3rd and long 134 times this entire year.
Okay.
That's 23 less than any other team in the league.
More than 1 a game. That's wow.
If you look at it, there are teams who have faced more 3rd and longs than the Niners have faced 3rd and medium and longs this year. The Bucs are a team. The Bucs have faced tons of 3rd and longs this year. So it's just every stat you look at, everything about the offense, they make it easier on themselves. The amount of single high coverages that they get to throw against, the amount of loaded boxes that they get to throw against, the amount of open receivers on explosive 10 air yard plays that they have. It's just the best designed offense in the NFL. There is no easy answer for how to slow them down. And that's why they're so scary.
They are. And they have it's the perfect mix of personnel, design, handpicked personnel too. You're doing this for this role and you're very good at it. You're doing this for this role and you're very good at it. It's everything. You don't get this a lot. So it's a lot of fun to watch right now. It just happens to just keep happening to Kyle Shanahan for some reason. I don't know why.
The one matchup that I think is worth watching in terms of, okay, who could wreck this game for the Packers? Who could really show up in a big way and change the flow of this thing is Rashawn Gary against Colton McKivitz, because he lines up on that side almost exclusively, but he's been quiet. He's been really quiet over the last 7 games since that Thanksgiving game when he was dominant against the Lions on Thanksgiving. He's had 3 or fewer pressures in 5 of his last 7 games. So they are going to need a vintage sort of Rashawn Gary performance and winning that mismatch consistently, I think, if they're going to win this game.
I was going to be mean, but when did he get paid again? But no, he's mean. I know. I noticed it though against the Cowboys. He had 1 good pass rush snap in the clips I watched before it kind of got funky. But it was just kind of, I don't know how to describe this pass rush, because they have pieces and at times it looks great. But then you're going to watch it against this 49ers team that's going to move so much. And it's like, it's going to really test their discipline. Yeah. And that's what I'm anxious to see. And they've gotten so much better. But it's just
predicated on one-on-one wins. This pass rush is predicated on one-on-one wins.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
because you look at these other teams that have this sort of talent up front and the way they win. An island. It creates that edginess that we're talking about. More stunts. You have these things. These guys win one-on-one all the time, and that's how good they are. But Devontae Wyatt and what he has been this year in those one-on-one situations, he's taking a massive step forward. Yes. So they're able to still survive that way because of how good these players are in those sort of spots.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Commanders front a few years ago when they were just the football team.
It's a great comparison because it's those 5-0 looks. We got 5 one-on-ones. Let's go to town, and they're able to do that.
You just reminded me. Wyatt had the funniest plays in that game. It was the Cowboys ran a trap play, and so on trap, one of the other guard or tackle is going to feign the defensive lineman. Little win. Hey, I'm going to block you, and just to get him to come upfield, and they slip by him. He just plants right on his face because Zach Martin, weird, is really good at it. At just even the fakes he's good at. So White falls on his face, and Tyler Smith is the one trapping, and you can tell Tyler Smith like felt bad. It's like, you can't really spear a guy on the ground anymore, but you can tell he's like, okay, and he kind of just like soft splashed him, and you can tell, and you can see White just shaking his hand. You can see Tyler Smith just kind of laughing. But anyways, I just had to share that play because it was a funny little moment happening on a football field. It's like 20 years ago that would have been a kill shot. And now the guys are kind of just, it's funny. It's like not a bad thing, but that where football is right now.
All right, let's get to our Sunday games here. The Bucs going to Detroit. Lions are -6.5 favorites in this game. This one pulls at our heartstrings, man. A little old NFC Central game. It's even better because in the previous matchup between these two teams this year, the Bucs wore the creamsicle uniforms. There's just a lot of nostalgia around these two teams in this game as we look forward to this one.
We're gonna see Barry Sanders versus Trent Dilfer. We're gonna see it something like that. I don't think because I think when Ford Field opened is when the Bucs moved to the NFC South, the newly created NFC South in 2002. So it's even this is Ford Field feeling is a little different for this matchup. But which is indoors, by the way. That's a tough one. It's tough one. I know. Bulls is like you can see the Bulls wires get going. It's like, wait a sec. But no, I don't know. I think watching this game, I was not expecting going into the season, a Lions-Buck divisional round game with actually some offenses that have some firepower. Of course, the Lions was expected. The Bucs has been surprising. And it's two former number one picks not on their first teams. And also just like, here we are. Like
a lot of redemption at stake here. And I think there already has been this season for both of these guys. I mean, what Jared Goff has done, he doesn't need this game to be redeemed. And I think the same thing pretty much goes for Baker Mayfield. I mean, the fact that, he already did. And the fact that Baker Mayfield is even in conversations to get an extension with this Bucs team, I think says all you need to know about what sort of season this has been for Baker Mayfield. These teams played in week 6, and that's a long time ago. And I think that there are certain elements to the game that aren't as relevant now. The Lions defense has really had a transformation since that game happened. They were a team that was playing a lot of zone, a lot of quarters earlier in the season. Since in that game specifically, they played like 35% quarters, which is a massive number in any single game. Since their bye, the Lions have played man on 37% of dropbacks, which is the 5th highest rate in the league according to Next Gen Stats. The Bucs have seen man coverage on only 11.5% of their dropbacks, which is the 30th rate in the NFL, which ranks 30th in the NFL. So that on that side of the ball is probably the thing I'm most interested in. This more aggressive, more blitz happy, more man heavy version of the Lions against a Bucs team that hasn't seen a lot of man coverage this year. Who blinks first, and what does that end up looking like?
Yeah, it's very funny. The Lions defense, even going against the Rams, it's like at first they're like, okay, we're going to do a little zone, a little cover 2. They were running a little zone and stuff on first and second down to start the game. And then as the Rams just kept gashing and Matthew Stafford just kept throwing fireball after fireball, Hadouken after Hadouken, no look after no look. I'm in the middle of doing a compilation of all the no look passes. I'm at 6 so far, and I'm not even through the first half. And that is not even an exaggeration. Not every number one pick is built the same. That's another story of these kind of 3 teams as well. But why I'm bringing that up is you could see after a while that the Lions defense is like, okay, enough, man. Like, just enough. We're trying to be a little different than what we've been doing recently. They blitz a little bit more on first and second down, but again, they kitchen sinked it. And again, this Rams offense that has a way better run game and has a lot of answers, and Stafford pulling the triggers is way different than how this Bucs team attacks. You don't really have to worry about the run game as much, which, okay, but also you have to worry about Mike Evans. So, all right, you see this Bucs team gets a lot of cloud coverage, gets a lot of cover 2 stuff because they don't have to worry about the run game. I don't know. I just want to see, that sounds good in the opening script, but did the Lions defense stick with that throughout the game? Because
I think that makes sense though, because if I'm Aaron Glenn coming into this game, the one thing that can't happen is I can't get beat by explosive throws. Exactly. I'm not going to let Mike Evans beat me in this game. So if I have to play a bunch of cloud and I have to play with a bunch of light boxes, I want Rashad White to win this game for the Bucs if I'm on that Lions defensive coaching staff, because I don't think they can.
And this is a difference too, is that Baker against man coverage this year, he has faced one of the lowest rates, but 0.31 EPA per dropback against man. Against zone,
really good.
It's insane. That's Lamar MVP level. Against zone, it's 0.1 EPA versus zone. So right there, I know what I'm running. So just looking at that, and just anecdotally, I don't want to make it easy on the quarterback. I don't want him to just be able to and that's the thing with Baker. You want to make Baker hold on the ball. The longer Baker holds onto the ball, bad things start to happen. That is what kind of doomed him in Cleveland, and it's been so much better at this year. I will say there's a couple times against Philly, I was like, Baker, stop. Like there was like a 3rd and 13. He's getting whacked. He's got 2 guys hitting him. And he's like still trying to run out of it. I'm like, just go down, dude. It's fine. It's fine. Like, I get it. You're competitive. You're tough. You're all that. But it's like, come on. Like, you guys are up 2 scores. Like, it's all right. But that's him. He's been so much better at it this year. You don't want to make it predictable for him. So I would make it cover 2. I would make the run game beat us. I would bet on a Lee McNeil and the other interior guys beating the interior guys of the Bucs. So that's the poison I would pick against this Bucs defense or Bucs
because
offense.
and we saw it last week. The Rams passing game was ridiculously efficient last week.
Yeah.
The Lions defense, even if they've made some upgrades and even if they spent a lot of resources on the secondary this offseason, their corners are struggling. Right now, you have Cam Sutton who's struggling, and then you have Kindle Vildor is their other outside corner. Kindle Vildor was one of the Bears corners last year when they had the worst offense in the NFL, or worst defense in the NFL.
He's from House Targaryen, isn't he?
It's a great name. It is a great name, but he has mostly been a rotational corner up to this point in his career. I mean, he was on the Eagles practice squad earlier this season. So yeah, I think that's just yet another reason to not leave those guys on islands against Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So it makes sense that would be the Lions' defensive approach.
Yeah.
The side of the ball that intrigues me way more is what this Bucs defense and what that blitz heavy Bucs defense is going to look like against Jared Goff in this Lions offense.
I also, before real quick, might be a Kate Otten game again because just the interior. And then also I want to give a shout out to Melifonwu because he's playing great football right now. So I do want to give him a little shout out too. But this side, I agree, is a lot of fun because you have the snipers that are the Lions offense. Like, I don't know what else to describe this team against the drunken boxing style of the Bucs defense under Todd Bowles. It is, I'm pretty fired up about this matchup because it is the blitz matchup, which we're going to talk about in a second. It was fun the first go around, and I'm excited to see kind of the new layers that these two sides add to kind of counteract each other.
Jared Goff has been good against the blitz this year. If you look at just his numbers against the blitz, his EPA per dropback is higher against the blitz than it is bringing 4. He had a 0.32 EPA per dropback last time these two teams played when the Bucs brought 5 or more.
Hero throws too.
But even as I look at those numbers, I still think that I want to try to bring some heat and make him uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because I think that you want to play into that variance, and I think you want to make him put together some of those hero throws again. Yep. The last time these two teams played, the Lions were 9 of 16 on third down. They had to make some big time plays on third down to do what they did on offense. And what I thought was interesting is that the Bucs brought heat on more than 50% of third down snaps the first time around. On early downs, it was like 30%. And a lot of the big time conversions that the Lions had, there was that crosser to Amon-Ra St. Brown where Craig Reynolds had the crazy block up the sideline. That's an underneath completion. They had a screen to Craig Reynolds on 3rd and long where they're just getting the ball in his hands and let him go to work. So I wonder, even if I want you to be blitzing a ton, do you maybe change the ratios a little bit depending on down and distance? Is there maybe less big blitzes, fewer big blitzes on third down, maybe bring a little bit more heat on first down? Maybe just play with it a tiny bit so you're not giving Goff easy answers in those third down scenarios where the Lions can really hurt you. Because what they do and the answers they have in every third down situation is very impressive. If you look at the Lions overall, their 3rd and long conversion rate is like middle of the pack. But why anecdotally it sticks out to me is that the teams at the top of the league are teams with scrambling quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You have your Josh Allens, your Mahomeses. They're making plays out of structure. So the fact that the Lions are so good on 3rd and long with a quarterback who can't play out of structure is a testament to the designs and the plans they have for those situations.
And one of the plans they did was is a goodie. They did the cheetah cadence, which is as soon as the center grabs the ball, he snaps it. So there's no ready go. There's no foot by the quarterback. They're going to be at home. Also, which does matter when you're going against a blitzing team. Blitzing teams are way less fun when you're on the road, when you got a hot crowd like that was in Tampa. So that's another big component of this too. But that cheetah cadence, what is really nice about it, and this is a classic teams use on passing downs, the Packers used it last week against the Cowboys as well, is you're just not letting them get set. Okay, if we're going to be this designer blitz that like Bulls likes to run, guys have to be matched up correctly. That's why motion can make it wonky too, because
it's like fast breaking against a team that loves to play half court defense.
Yeah, it's like a 2-3 zone. Yeah, it's like okay, that's exactly right. And so that's what I love about this Lions team, is that they will have answers no matter what. There's the cheetah cadence already brought up against the Chargers defense. They said 3rd and 4, you're going to get these funky fronts. 4th and 4, we'll just pound the rock. Okay, we don't care. We don't care if it's rushing stats or passing stats. We care about points. We're going to get them. They were doing, was this against the Bears? I think they did a flea flicker on 3rd and extra long when they're backed up. Like no matter
that sounds
what,
right.
Yeah, a flea flicker on 3rd and extra long. It was a draw flea flicker, but it was backed up 3rd and extra long. Why I'm bringing all this up is this: no matter what, you bring in these blitzes, you bring these funky looks, you get some bad situations. This Lions team is always prepared. They always have answers. They're always just calm. I brought up the Mortal Kombat fatality thing because it was just like we are in this situation. We're going to do left, right, A, B, up, down. Okay, cool. We got it right there. And they just do it over and over and over. And I love that 3rd and long stat, because even without the scrambles, it's by precision. And watching them against the Bucs,
there's nothing accidental. They are guided missile shots in those exact moments.
I watched that's why it's like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he wins, don't get me wrong, but he gets put into these leverage situations that helps him win. And the contrast of watching that Lions offense and watching the Eagles offense handle Todd Bowles blitzes, because that was actually kind of great to watch it back to back, night and day. That is, the Eagles is, hopefully our players can make some plays. The Lions go, here, we're going to help you make this play. Okay, go dunk on them. Great. Thank you. There we go. There's another first down for us. And it's just very refreshing to watch.
I mean, he's in the conversation for the best offensive coordinator in the league, the best play caller in the league.
Yes.
I mean, what Kyle Shanahan has done is phenomenal. We've talked about McVay. We've talked about LaFleur. Ben Johnson is in that discussion with every single one of those guys based on what he's done over the last couple of years. The Amon-Ra St. Brown part, and that point I think is important to bring up. I don't know what his over-under catches are in this game. I'm hammering the over. If I'm somebody to bet on this stuff, I'm hammering the over. How many targets do you think he got the last time these two teams played?
Oh, probably 12 or 14.
15.
15, yeah.
He had 15 targets, and that is real. When teams blitz the Lions, he gets an astronomical target share, and that's where they want to go. Yeah. When they need a quick answer, that's where they go. And Laporta is not that far behind. Right. Their target concentration when blitzed is almost exclusively those two guys. Laporta got 11 targets last time these two teams played.
And they didn't have Gibbs last time either. And from anecdotally, a classic Sean Payton answer, which is the Lions do some of the Sean Payton stuff, is a lot of choice routes, hoping and catching on like a dropping end. Mm-hmm. And just kind of like, okay, we got Jahmyr Gibbs on, Logan Hall. I'm just trying, but that's a win. That's a win.
On Nelson, number 92. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, also the other funky thing I wanted to bring up about this Bucs team, and I'm curious if they do it against the Lions when they get into heavier personnel, if they get the tight ends out there, is last week against the Eagles, they went to a 4-4-3 personnel with just 3 DBs. Just, 6 guys up front. We're going man coverage.
Why would you do that?
Big bodies, take away the runs. So just create no cloth up front. But also they just, Todd Bowles, if he doesn't think your quarterback can beat him consistently against blitzes, he's just going to keep doing those looks. They put 3 DBs out there against 2 receivers because they're just like, yeah, we're fine. We're fine. We got 2 corners. And I think it was 2 safeties too. But the Bucs did on rundowns. They did that week, and they did it against the Saints in week 17. And both situations, it was when you go into this bigger personnel, we're taking away all the cloth and we're just going to beat up your receivers and run cover 0 and heat them up and try and get to a blitz plan. So I don't know if they'll do that because the Lions have way better answers against this. Hank Fraley does a great job. The Lions offensive line does a great job sorting stuff out. So
he's their offensive line coach.
Offensive line coach. Thank you. But that would leave a lot of potential gash situations, but it is Todd Bowles. And when he has no fear, it's actually a lot of fun to watch. So watch him just kind of like be a piranha against some of these offenses, and that we got a vintage performance last week.
A few more pass protection notes before we move on that I wanted to point out. One, no Jonah Jackson the last time these two teams played, and you could tell. They took advantage of that left guard over and over and over again, whether it was blitzes, one-on-ones with Kalijah Cansey, a lot of different situations. Two, Jahmyr Gibbs is playing a lot more on third down now than he did early in the season. He's actually their primary third down back now. What does that mean in pass protection against a team like this?
Yeah. He's gotten better, but he's still iffy.
So that I wonder, do we see him as much on third down in this game against the Bucs compared to David Montgomery because of what sort of defense this is? And go ahead.
I hope that you just brought up a great point, because last game, this is where Devin White was getting some run, was just being the running back eraser. That's like his role now, and hug rush him, keep it. So no, you just kind of had a light bulb moment. So you might see some Devin White, Jahmyr Gibbs when he is in the game. See that matchup a lot.
And the last thing I wanted to point out about the Lions against pressure, because this is an ongoing conversation about Jared Goff. And yes, he does struggle when pressured. He's just not that sort of quarterback. But a number that I thought was just mind-blowing. Jared Goff this season, according to PFF, has the third lowest pressure to sack rate in the NFL. Third lowest. The two guys below him are the usual suspects. It's Mahomes and Josh Allen, who are at like 10%. They're aliens. The lack of negative plays from those guys is just crazy. Goff is third with a 1% scramble rate. Awesome. Jared Goff has scrambled this season 7 times. So the fact that he doesn't get sacked, but also doesn't scramble, is really a testament to how good he is in the pocket. Yep. If you watch Jared Goff, he is the perfect quarterback for offensive linemen. He's going to drop to 7.5 yards every single time. He's going to be in the exact spot that you want him to be. And his release, actually, he gets the ball off in tight spaces a lot better than you would expect for a guy with his physical profile. So even if he's not darting around the pocket and moving around a lot, he's actually been really good at negating negative plays. And when you're trying to figure out why is this Lions offense so good, that's part of it, is that they're so good at creating these designer explosives, but they also don't have negative plays. They don't have a lot of rushes for loss. They don't take a lot of sacks. So they're just coming at you from a lot of different directions to lead to what has been one of the 5 best offenses in the league.
I like the guided missile. That's what it is, just over and over. They just they find this perfect play, and then it's like, if it doesn't work, it's like 0 yards as opposed to -8 yards, and then it doesn't put them behind the sticks where they have to do desperate things. They're just always on the attack.
All right.
Yeah, I also want to great Haas fight, by the way. Great Haas fight coming up in this game. We got Vita Vea versus Frank Ragnow. We got
there are a lot of matchups up front that are worth watching.
Lions offensive line versus actually the Bucs defensive line. Kalijah Cansey too. That's a fun one. Like I said, they're front. So great Haas fight.
And the last time these two teams played, Aiden Hutchinson got blanked by Luke Goedeke. And if they can do that again, and if the Bucs can win up front and pass protection, that's just one more area where they'll have a fighting chance. But this feels like a game where you're going to need an interception. You're going to need a turnover. You're going to need something to swing your way on defense against this Lions offense. But I think we know that.
I forgot about that T-Rex battle between Goedeke and Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah.
Maybe that's why. He just doesn't know how to deal with him because they both got those short little arms. All right. Let's get to the last one here. This is the main event in more ways than one. Chiefs at Bills. Mahomes against Allen again. And I love this stuff. I love when you get these quarterback rivalries that you continue to see in the postseason. And what I love about it is we're getting these different versions of both teams. If you had told me 3 years ago that we would get a Bills-Chiefs matchup in the playoffs, and the element that I'd be most interested in would be Josh Allen against the Steve Spagnuolo defense because of how good the Chiefs defense was, I probably wouldn't believe you. But that's where we are. We have these teams that are much better at running the ball than they used to be. The Chiefs defense is so much better than it was a couple years ago. And when you have fixtures at the position, that's what's going to happen. Think about how many versions of the Patriots we've had over the last 20 years. How many different sorts of Colts, Peyton Manning teams did we have over the years? That's what this is. And so it's a little bit different of a feel than this matchup has been in years past, but you still have, even in what has been interesting seasons for both of them, the two best quarterbacks in the league playing for a chance to go to the AFC Championship game.
That's funny you say that because it was when even breaking down this game, the first team unit I put notes on was the Chiefs defense. It was in a game that has Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I was like, oh, what's Spags cooking up? How's he using these guys? All right, that's cool. But I think that is awesome. And we've hit on plenty of times, but just like how these teams ebb and flow when you have dudes at quarterback that can do this and can evolve and can change and adapt. I think that's what's awesome. So I'm fired up. I'm fired up for this game. I'm glad it's the Sunday night game. We're going to be coasting right into it. So for that Sunday night show. So I can't wait.
Everything about this on both sides of the ball, I think there's so much to dig into, but that Bills offense against the Chiefs defense is the first thing that I was thinking about. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a little worried. I'm a little bit worried about this Bills offense against that team, because when they played last time, the Bills won. The Bills had some explosive plays. The Bills played okay offensively, but they made Josh Allen put that cape on a dozen times over the course of that game. He was able to. He's always able to get to that level, but they made him get there in order to win that game. The Chiefs had 7 plays where they had a free rusher in that game. I think they had 1 sack on those 7 plays. It was 1 or 2. And one of them was a play where he almost got it away and his knee barely touched the ground as he was getting dragged down by like 2 different guys. So that's one area, but I think there are even a couple more where it might be tough sledding for this Bills offense despite how good they've been this season.
How many times do you see, it must be so frustrating. This opposing team, the Steelers got it a couple times. There's just that free runner running right at the quarterback and he just sidesteps it, steps up, steps out, and it's a 20-yard gain. And it was very stark going from that because it was like the same move Allen did where he makes a free runner miss, and then watching the Eagles game later, and it was just like those were auto sacks or auto incompletions, and that's the difference. But I think also Allen in their first matchup, and I do want to talk about this because you're just talking about his ability to avoid those pressures, but just his pre-snap stuff is that is one of the biggest evolutions of his game. He's always been a little better at handling some of that stuff than people realize, but I think this year has full control of the offense, and this game was one of the best examples of it. There's a play where we talked about on our Sunday night show about after this game, but he adjusted a protection against a Chiefs blitz. He literally tells James Cook, run a wheel route, runs a wheel route, beats Willie Gay up the sideline because Willie Gay gets picked, yada, yada. But the fact that he has evolved to that, plus his post-snap his post-snap Josh Allen-ness, I think that's what's really cool, is because in prior years, I would have just been like, yeah, that chaotic mode might get him in the ass. It might get him a couple times, but now it's like, hey, shoot, he can make the guy miss, but also he can handle some protections. And the run game does have some answers and better answers than it has in the past. So I don't know. I think the Chiefs do have stuff to make that chaoticness come out, but you have to live with the good and bad of both sides of the ball. So I don't know. It's gash or be gash.
The run game is a very good thing to bring up. We've talked about this a lot with the Bills this season. The running game as a way to kind of exhale, have a calming force of your offense. And over the second half of the season, they've led the NFL in first down run rate as a way to kind of, it's just a soothing factor for who you want to be on that side of the ball. And one of the best things they did, these teams played a few weeks ago, and I love that. You can just go back and take a look at it. It all still applies. The Bills had some success running the ball, especially in the second half, especially with some of those gap scheme runs, the tackle pull stuff that we've talked about. So I think that leaning into that and using that as a way to kind of keep everything on the rails is a good way to approach this Chiefs defense right now.
And that's been the biggest evolution of this Bills team the last 2 years, is just that run game evolving from, we're just running inside zone every single time or stretch every single time, and being predictable. Not those runs don't have answers all the time to what defenses do. So if a defense wants to be funky or move guys around, now being able to run these runs that they do now has answers to it. So I also think passing game wise might be a Shakir game again, or a James Cook game again, because Chiefs are really leading into that zero double stuff, taking away the top 2 receivers. To me, that'd be Diggs and Kincaid. So an auxiliary pass catcher has to step up, but also the double-edged sword of that is now you're saying, hey, Josh Allen, we have no eyes on you. Go run around. So
I'd be surprised if they did that. I would be surprised if they did a lot of that in this game against him specifically.
Against him, and I'm always just like, oh, really? And they did it in their first matchup, but it's just, I'm curious how much they lean to it. Last game, it makes a lot more sense against Tua, who you never have to worry about scrambling, and that's why you got to some of those looks. So I'm curious if they do throw that change up in there.
James Cook was the best passing game weapon they had in the last game. He had the running back seam touchdown, and then he had the wheel route that you're talking about. And that running back seam touchdown that they had, where they run a jet motion to the right, and then James Cook runs a vertical up the left side. That is what I would zero in on if I were the Bills offense. Like that, the kernel of why that worked. Because this Chiefs defense is so good on the outside. The corners are so good. And the linebackers are pretty good, but it still is the area that I would attack if I were an opposing offense. The Chiefs this season, if you look at teams that have had success against them, it's the teams that have gotten those linebackers moving side to side and attacked the middle after that. The Packers used a ton of play action. The Bills used a lot of motion. The Bills had their highest single game motion rate of the year when they played against the Chiefs last time. Kansas City is 4th overall in EPA per dropback this season. They're 17th in EPA per dropback with play action. So just getting some movement in the middle of the field, displacing those guys in some way, I think that is where you could potentially go after them. And that is Khalil Shakir. That is James Cook. So those types of guys really showing up in this game, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills needed that.
It's kind of funny. The stuff that I've been proud of this Bills offense from evolving from is actually some of the stuff I think they might actually have to lean into is some of the RPO stuff, which is like spread it out and like kind of put the apex defenders in a bind, the guys slot defenders in a bind, and also that replaces the blitz. So you're going to see again, Allen has become smart with this, some side adjusts. So if you see like Dalton Kincaid or Shakir or Diggs or something over the middle where they look right away, now it's peppering the ball, that's a side adjust or a hot route. Based on the blitz. So you might see a few of those because they've gotten pretty good at them.
The last thing I wanted to mention, 2 more things. One, Diggs moving inside more to get him away from some of those corners maybe. And the personnel on both sides of the ball. The Bills, last time these two teams played, they're in 21 personnel. They're in 11 personnel. They're in 12 personnel. We've talked about how much jumbo that they've used recently, where they're putting all these big bodies on the field.
That matters too.
The Chiefs are one of the most versatile teams in the league in terms of the defensive personnel that they use. So there are only 2 teams in the NFL that have used base or dime personnel on at least 23% of their defensive snaps. The Steelers are one, the Chiefs are another. So whatever you want to do personnel-wise, Kansas City has an answer. Their main nickel personnel now is 3 safeties, not 3 corners. So they've had a lot of different approaches depending on what offenses have done to them, and they've had really good answers no matter what the question has been. And I expect that to continue against a Buffalo team that's throwing a whole lot of shit at teams right now.
And Josh Allen.
and Josh Allen. And Josh Allen.
He is a whole lot of shit. So
listen, I said I really am a little bit worried about what this Bills team is going to look like against the Chiefs defense because of how good the Chiefs defense is right now. Yeah. All of that being said, that could all be negated in a single second by the quarterback. And that's why you have one of those quarterbacks.
That's it. That's why you need them in the playoffs, because they break glass and they make everything right.
Well, guess what? On the other side of the ball, we have the best quarterback in the NFL going against the Bills defense. Biggest concern here for Buffalo is just what the injuries are going to look like. And it sounds like it's more optimistic than it could have been.
Okay.
So Rasul Douglas, very likely going to practice. Tyrell Dotson, very likely going to play in this game. Teron Johnson is going to be back. He was phenomenal in the last game these 2 teams played. He was unbelievable. So him being there is a big, big deal. Christian Benford not practicing. Terrell Bernard not practicing. Bernard, it seems like he's going to try to give it a go. Okay. And it's insane that on January 18th, one of my big takeaways about the Buffalo Bills is how badly they need Terrell Bernard to play, because he was maybe the biggest question on the entire depth chart coming into the season.
He's been reliable. I know him and it was like when Deron Bland bumped out to the outside for the Cowboys. It's like, oh, actually, he's not bad at this. I really, even with the injuries, the original rash of injuries that this defense faced, and just the adjustments they've made, this defense, because they've been playing for their lives, has truly been on playoff type run as far as game plan wise for 2 months now. So if the narrative and the optics were a little better, Sean McDermott would be up there for coach of the year. But when you fire your offensive coordinator, you got some weird metaphors that leak out. You got kind of all that.
It's been a strange year for Sean McDermott.
But as far as just strictly a schematic X's and O's coach, because he is the defensive play caller right now, the Bills have done one of the best patch jobs and actually played well, and not just going like, oh, it's average like we do with the Rams, playing well and taking it to some good offenses. I mean, the first half against the Eagles, it was like they controlled that entire game before it kind of fell apart at the end. But I mean, when you watch a lot of teams did that actually. That point isn't as good as it was maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But really, this Bills defense has done such a good job. But that's the thing, is now the reinforcements are now falling down. And that is just, it's hard. It's just really hard, because even with the Chiefs' woes, relative woes, I should say, they still have Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid. They still have an okay offensive line. They still have Travis Kelce, even if he's 70%, 75%. It's gone down 5% every week. So it's like 72% right now. It was 85% a couple of weeks ago. But they still have that. They still have Rashee Rice. So it's just hard. It's hard to come up with answers if you just don't have the horses to execute those answers.
Among all those guys, Christian Benford being out, I wonder how much that matters, because they picked on him last time these two teams played. They threw his way 12 different times, according to PFF, for 11 receptions. And if you look at the way the Chiefs offense attacked the Bills, it's the exact opposite of how I would attack the Chiefs defense if I were the Bills. It was all throws to the outside. It was quick throws underneath, and it was a lot of high lows against those corners. And so that makes sense. Like, if you want to look, where are the weak points? Because you don't want to attack the safeties. It's different for Buffalo than it is for Kansas City. So them trying to attack the perimeter again consistently in the passing game would not surprise me. But the one area that I think is the most important is how well the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball in this game. Because we know what the Bills are. The Bills are going to come out and they are going to play with light bodies pretty much no matter what you do from a personnel perspective. So if the Chiefs are going to come out there in 12, 13 personnel, and the Bills are going to be content to match with nickel, and they were last time. They played 85% light boxes the last time these two teams played. Can the Chiefs assert themselves on the ground? Pacheco didn't play in the last matchup. He's playing now. We saw what the offensive line did last week against Miami. Mm-hmm. So that aspect of this Chiefs offense, I think, will dictate how far they can go in this game, and ultimately probably how far they can go in the playoffs overall.
And this is the one kind of trend or data point I came across, and just this was a huge story of the Chiefs last year, was their use of 13 personnel, which is 3 tight ends. Has a lot of benefits. Defenses treat Travis Kelce like a receiver. Hey, guess what? No matter what, this Bills defense is going to be light bodies. So what the advantage is of using 13 personnel is, hey, we're going to steamroll some people on the ground. In theory, it worked last year for this Chiefs offense. This year it's been a little shakier, but the thing was, they got away from 13 personnel this year. It kind of dropped for them. Maybe some working receivers. I've been trying to figure it out. But last week against the Dolphins, they ran it 18 times out of 13%, which is the most of Patrick Mahomes' career since he's been a starter. So they were pretty good running it, but they were very good passing out of it. So I think that's one simple answer to kind of really control the game and keep it out of the other team's hands and really take advantage of what the Bills have on defense right now.
One other matchup I think is worth watching is the Chiefs front against the Bills offensive line. Because the Chiefs dominated last week against Miami. That Chiefs front dominated. And
that was the Chiefs offensive line I expected this year. That's what it looked like right there.
Yeah. And the Bills offensive line has been a good unit this year. Like, it is full of good players, but you can still get a bunch of those guys in one-on-one pass rush moments. Like, Osiris Torrance has been really solid for a rookie, but Chris Jones is a different sort of beast. Charles Omenihu, who slid inside on passing situations, is a different sort of beast than other guys that you're going to be going against. So whether the Chiefs can, again, win this game up front the way they did last week, the way we envisioned they might be able to coming into the season, again, I think is a really, really important question.
And Gary for a lot of Rashee Rice bubbles and flats. That worked last time, so I'll be my little on the other side of the ball. The Chiefs' offense was very efficient last time these two teams played, and Rice had a good game, but also had he had a fumble on a catch and run. He had a misalignment. I think I made a point about that after the game. He's gotten better though in this last month. They have seen an improvement in that area. We talked about him uncovering against his zone. So Rashee Rice, I think, is going to have to step up, because I think, of course, they're going to obviously game plan for Kelce and just keep on improving, because again, he's a special talent.
It's been a weird Mahomes season just because of the wide receiver lapses and the overall just inefficiency of the offense at times. Yeah, it's just been a weird year for a guy who I think is pretty consensus the best player in the NFL. Going back and watching that game, there were 3 or 4 plays against the Bills last time where it's like, oh yeah, That guy's really, really good. The touchdown that he threw to Rashee Rice, it was wild.
That is Mike. I don't know how to describe it.
You watch it from 3 different angles.
Yeah.
And so Rice is running a crossing route from left to right. When Mahomes lets the ball go, you can't even see Rice in the picture from the shot behind the offense in the all-22. You can't even see him when he's deciding to let the ball go. He no-looks it because Kelsey is underneath. So he's staring at Kelsey the entire time. And by staring at Kelsey, he keeps Jordan Poyer on Kelsey and throws a no-look missile to Rashee Rice in the back of the end zone. And everyone always jokes, well, if Mahomes did this, people would be going insane. I actually think it's swung back the other way.
It has.
I think that we're so used to the shit that he does that it no longer feels notable, and he's still doing this stuff. Even if he's not breaking records, even if this isn't the best offense in the league, even if he's not the MVP of the league this season, he's still doing this stuff consistently. I think fewer people are noticing it because they've become numb to it.
I had someone replied to me on Twitter. I know Twitter's not real life, but someone's like, you didn't have Mahomes in your top 3? Or I'm sorry, or where's Mahomes have? Like, you didn't have him in your top 3. And I was like, yeah, but he's still in his top 5. Like, I still would have had him as a 4th or 5th because of just what he's like, just watching him he was the offense. The run game
if we were starting
the ball.
If we were doing a draft this weekend, if you got to do a fantasy draft for the divisional round of the playoffs and you were picking guys, he would be the number 1 pick. He still would be. It would be no question.
I know. I know. And that's the thing, is even some of the stats aren't that bad. Like, they're still great. They're still like top 5 and everything. You're right. We have gotten a little spoiled because what should be weekly watching sometimes. I think we just look at the box score, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, Mahomes. But then like you said, you watch it and you see it's like a sequel to Wanted, like you just spinning balls everywhere, throwing underhand, left-handed, all the stuff they do. It's like, again, he's the dude. He is the dude. He's Mahomes, and I'm glad we get to watch him.
They're 8th in passing DVOA this season. 8th.
Yeah.
With those guys at receiver, with all the drops, with the offensive line not playing very well.
They were 8th
in passing DVOA. We're having this entire discussion about the Cowboys and how much better the Cowboys offense was. And look at this production from the Cowboys passing offense. The Cowboys were 11th in passing DVOA. The Chiefs are 8th.
We're spoiled. We're spoiled. And you would think it's a season from hell. With no run game. Again, with no run game.
With no run game.
With a bottom 5
that's why they feel so dangerous.
Yes.
Because it really does feel like they have been this sleeping giant, because it's what you said over the last couple weeks about the offensive line, I think is so important to point out. It's not, their offensive line isn't good enough. It's like, this group isn't playing very well. So if this can click into place with the defense that they have, it's scary. It is really scary. But guess what? I think the same thing about this Buffalo team.
Yes.
I think because the injuries on defense are my biggest concern, but top to bottom, that team is really scary because of what the quarterback can give you, because of the pivot points that they now have on offense, and because of the talent that they have defensively and the game planning stuff that we're going to talk about. So there's a reason this line is 2.5. And I think there's a reason that when this team probably plays Baltimore next week, it's going to set up to be a very good, very close game, no matter who wins.
There was 5, maybe 6 of these playoff teams, of the 14 playoff teams, that passed the, this is going to be a show we do with Barnwell in a few weeks, the lessons of the Final Four. But a stat I came across, which is, 40% success rate and 14% or more explosive pass rate is kind of a good threshold for like who has a chance to make a run. And the Ravens passed it, of course. The Bills passed it. The Chiefs did not pass it.
Explosive plays.
Correct. And the run game. They didn't pass it either. And I still am like, they can still make it because Mahomes, their improvement that they've shown, but it just always comes back to this defense. Spags has always gotten a lot of respect from guys like us and a lot of people in the league, even if the numbers haven't been good, because of what he does in the playoffs. This year, he has a top 8 defense, top 6.
He's got the horses now. They have the dudes now.
And now we're in the playoffs. And that's what makes this team. Mahomes with improving offense and that defense, that's why it is so scary, along with the teams that do meet that threshold.
You watch those guys at every single level of the defense. What the defensive line is right now. The way
Karlaftis.
You trot out a Menahu, Karlaftis, Chris Jones, and the blitzes. I mean, the pass pressure is going to be there. The corners are, it's a crazy good collection of corners.
Snead was
what
my
Trent
second team
McDuffie
All-Pro.
and Snead are doing are unbelievable, and
McDuffie
they have
All-Pro.
guys
Yep.
on the back end.
Yep.
What Justin Reed can be within this
super
defense.
smart. He shores it all up. Yep.
So
good.
this team has a shot. This
It
team
does. They do.
absolutely has a shot. I mean, not only
Totally
this
agree with
week, but overall, I think that they still have a chance that a lot of people weren't willing to give them at other portions of this season. And
It's been tough.
they got to do it this weekend, but
They
I
do,
think
of
they
course.
absolutely have a shot.
Oh.
All right. That's all we got, man.
Can't wait.
Even if we got some bigger lines, I think that there's a lot to be excited about within these individual matchups. And we got a real headliner coming at the end of it. So
we got high point totals, which is always like, ooh, here we go.
Yeah, Packers Niners is going to be fun. No matter what happens, Packers Niners is going to be fun.
The lowest point total of the weekend is 43.5, and that's Texans Ravens, who have 2 good offenses. So we're in a good spot, guys.
All right. That is all we've got. Sincerely appreciate you guys listening. We will be back on Sunday nights breaking down all things divisional round. Until then, enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you guys later.